Good morning. Welcome to the August 17th edition of Clever Conversations. I am Mike Cavanaugh. I am the chairman of Regiment, and I am joined this morning by Peter Apostol down in Florida. Peter, how's the weather down in Florida today?
It's hot, it's humid, and it's probably going to be thunderstorming later.
Yeah, not a shock for mid-August.
August. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
as bad as it gets.
Well, thanks for coming on and taking some time to join us this morning. I've had the opportunity to speak to you a couple times, but would love to get to know you better. And before we jump into what you're doing at Family Office Portal, maybe you can give us a little insight how you got there, a little bit of a look into your entrepreneurial journey. It's been fun getting to know you over the years.
Yeah, I thank you. Yeah, I started I started kind of getting involved in this whole deal space, playing with my toys in my dad's office. And he ran a small hedge fund, so kind of heard about what was going on and got a lot of exposure at a young age. And then quickly start in college. I was able to lend somebody some money and took over their pool party company, which was pretty advantageous at the time, and turned it into something that was doing about 100,000 in revenue every week. Um, After we were able to take it over, so um, that's where I started kind of playing in the deal space, and some worked out better than others, but always kind of learning along the way. But um, After that, I moved when I moved up to Palm Beach, which was just a crazy major pocket of wealth and just so accessible. Um, I would, I was younger here and single. So I'd go out to eat every night and I'd just sit at the bar at these restaurants in Palm Beach. And, I found myself talking to the founding partners of Millennium Group one night, talking to some guy about his $100 million wine collection and he keeps in a warehouse in Toronto. And just start making these types of connections very organically and connecting with people and just trying to find out what their problems were and what they were trying to do, what hurdles they had to overcome to do that, and seeing where I could get myself involved very selfishly and how I could participate in some of the exciting stuff that they were doing. And in that, through that same sort of organic, just meeting and connecting with people, I met a former business partner, and he had just sold a hedge fund database. So he'd run a company called HedgeCo. And what we were able to do was begin, he had a database of hedge funds. They would do monthly reporting, post their results back in the early 2000s, and investors would register on his site. And so he kind of he had a good seed of a network and a database that we started with. But at this point, he had just sold the company and had started a small family office, very small. But he knew the opportunities would be to partner with people doing bigger deals. So he wanted to meet other folks. So we started hosting small networking events. And the first one was really just word of mouth. In Palm Beach, we approached a restaurant lounge that we liked and told them we wanted to have a bunch of people come over. They weren't going to charge us. We did an open bar. We didn't do an open bar. People paid for their own drinks, and we hosted this networking event. About 40 people came, and it was just really phenomenal because we went through word of mouth. So everyone sort of had a good recommendation and wanted to invite a few good people, and the crowd was incredible. Everyone was very quick to start talking about the things that they were working on, what their backgrounds were, how they made their wealth, what they were working on these days. Generally that was pretty consistent. Guys who made their money in real estate were doing more real estate. Guys that made their money in healthcare or had another healthcare deal that they were looking at or working on. And, just by talking to these folks, they started opening up very quickly, and being part of the community with them also really helped. But that was where we started it. And from there, we really grew that, started going to other cities. And, we found that, when we wanted to enter, say, Los Angeles or Denver, we just announced it. And people would forward that invitation around. It had a lot to do with the fact that we started building a reputation for being sort of a resource to these family offices. And at the time, I think the market it was a bit less of a corrupted buzzword than it is now. Since attending a lot of the conferences and ultimately we became media sponsors at these conferences. Um, we were, I've seen so many people show up at these, and I'm sure everyone can relate. You're talking to somebody, they're telling, they introduce themselves, or they're wearing a family office badge, name tag, and you start talking to them. They've got the next best deal, and they need $100 million to do it. They have no equity in it, and but they're a family office. So we started hosting these events all over the country and just connecting with folks. And it got to the point where we would regularly host these to kind of keep like a YPO type of, or, network. The people that attended our events, whether it was an investor presentation, very targeted with a sort of defined subject matter and topic, or it was just an open format cocktail reception. These guys started connecting with each other. And, it's funny when people ask me how much money I've raised over my and it's hard to put a number on it because so much of that came out of deals that sort of started through side conversations. We may have made the initial introduction, and when we started this, I didn't have a broker dealer, so I wasn't registered, and it was the intention, but at the time I wasn't there, so we only were able to be compensated through just retainers, marketing fees, consulting fees, and it really limited the upside. And when we started seeing some of these transactions that we were helping facilitate, it was obvious that we were leaving so much money on the table that we had to go that route. Now I still think the vast majority of the deals that we were able to put together through that still came out of transactions that we'd never onboarded or never really got terribly deeply involved in, but somebody saying that they were working on a tire recycling plant or something like that, and knowing that somebody had a waste to energy interest, we'd be happy. We'd always make those connections. And the fun part was that when you're making a good introduction to these family offices, especially the smaller ones that we specialized in, they were so appreciative to see good deal flow, or see deal flow that matched up with an area that they have expertise in and have knowledge about. And they're quick to come back with feedback, and next time you reach out to them, they respond much more quick. They respond very quickly and put attention on whatever it is you're trying to show them, whether it's good or bad. So that was the process of how we really built the relationship. It was starting off with an introductory call, and kind of positioning ourselves as a resource, able to connect them with great deal flow, great industry professionals, service providers. And I think, I don't think you need to have a huge organization, and network around, being a family office resource to position yourself as an advisor in front of somebody that way. Just telling them, if they're in an area and other investors that might be prominent in that area, just finding some common ground to start the conversation around. But especially with these people that are worth in that sort of sub $500-600 million range, a lot of them they have these problems, and one of the big ones is they don't know who they can trust. Everyone that's approaching them has an agenda, and everybody that's trying to give them advice, introduce them to an attorney, introduce them to a deal, they might be getting a kickback. They've got some sort of interest in making that connection, and it makes it difficult to sort of know who you can talk to and who can be the best resource for a problem they're facing.
Yeah. That was really good. I'm going to unpack it a little bit.
Thanks.
No, that was good. I was like getting ready to ask some questions, but while you kept talking, you started answering some of my questions. So just going to kind of clarify for the
Yeah.
listeners. So what I heard is connect with people, build a community, solve problems, and be a resource. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like the trail of like that's how you build your network, both on the deal side, and then on the family office side, you become that resource. And I want to talk about the deal side first, and then go into the how you became a resource for family offices. On the deal flow side, um, you know, I don't know how many emails I get from friends and constituents in my network that send me a deck and say, "Hey, so and so is raising capital." It's just you
Yeah.
get bombarded. Like, how do you capture good deal flow? How do you vet it? How do you source it? Like, what's the trick
So
there?
So that was an evolution too, and really became a focal point because originally be charging retainers. The smart guys came in and they wanted they recognized that the cheapest cost of capital is the guy that can't take a success fee. So by paying a retainer and not having a broker dealer, it opened us up to some pretty cool opportunities. One of these was a woman from Y. She came out of Y Combinator, and she had an accounting software platform now, and she loved that we weren't getting, we wouldn't be getting paid a success fee, and she gave herself like a $250 million valuation for a startup. Um, and it was pretty crazy. We took her out and we got like four term sheets back. And I was blown away. I'd never gotten so much traction, interest. It actually turned into term sheets like that. But she turned every one of them down because she thought she was worth more. She ultimately had the last laugh, and I think her company's worth 3 billion today. Um, but it was that was the biggest thing that we would the feedback that we would get, especially when we'd work with and present or set up meetings around a bad deal, somebody that wasn't really well fleshed out, somebody, and very quickly the feedback came back, no one wants to waste their time with this is the issue, this is the issue with this deal. And you just can't do too much of that. You've got to be pretty selective, and it's hard to say what that is. You've got to due diligence on a deal. I found one of the best ways to really vet an offering is actually seeing their budget to raise the capital. If somebody's not prepared to spend somewhere between 50 and $100,000 to raise, I don't care if it's 5 million or 50 million, they're really they're really going out there with their tin cup. And however you want to kind of put that, but it reflects back. I'm not saying that there aren't good deals that don't have enough funding to get started, but that's a major, that's a big thing I look at when I'm looking at going through deal flow. And even if it's not, they don't need to spend that much. I just want to see if they're not, if that makes them gulp when you ask them about it. And uh, the other one being successful people stay successful. If people have a good resume and they've been working, if you take a look at the principals, the partners in a project or in a company, if they've had a series of successful business, endeavors behind them, whatever they looked like. And I don't care if it's a different industry. They've got relationships, they've got a way to get started, they're going to have funding to do the project, and they probably have their act together. And they just need more money than the bank can get them, or they're going to put into it themselves. And those are always going to be the best. Those are probably the second to best tier of deal. And the absolute best are the ones that are family office led, sponsored. They don't really need the money. And if there is an opportunity to put more money into it, it never gets circulated. Those, but obviously those don't come around much.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. I like the point you make about a good indicator being, have they budgeted capital to raise capital?
Mhm.
Um, that's a really good point. And if the answer is no, we don't need it, that might be a good indicator or a red flag of like, okay, this person might be um, not worth pursuing because they haven't given it enough thought to actually pursue um, the execution. Um, I really like that point. Um, so jumping back over to being a resource for the family offices, I know they face challenges, and there's that old adage that if you've met one family office, you've met one family office. But what are some of the challenges you see family offices having, and how do you help solve those problems?
You know, it, Everyone's got a wealth manager. They've already got relationships at their JP Morgan, Goldman, or whatever bank, whatever sort of investment bank they like to work with that's set them up with probably the same risk adjusted, bond weighted portfolio that, they're going to get anywhere they went. So where they start getting, and that's where a bulk of the assets usually are there or tied up in their principal company. So it's the projects that they want to talk to you about. It's the deal flow that they want to look at that becomes their sort of that's where their passions come out, and that's where you're dealing with the decision maker. They've got the resources behind them to fund a transaction, or to put it, to syndicate a deal or put it together. But you've got to kind of strike the nerve, and generally that's going to be something where the people have experience. it's, with outside of philanthropy, sometimes you could play off of like healthcare, working on an oncology, something, or company. We were able to get in front of folks that had a child that suffered the illness, or the patriarch might have been suffering from it, and some that have been able to pull that one off. Where a guy invested in the company because he wanted to be the test patient. But um, it's to connect with these folks, and first you really find out where their interests are, and they'll tell you that. They're not going to talk to you about the bond portfolio that JP Morgan set up for them. They're going to talk to you about the healthcare startup they put 50 100 no, $5 million into 100,000, whatever it was, that that they really care about, even if it was a small investment.
Great. No, that's a good point. The interests of the family, where their passion lies, or where they've had success in the past, typically, you know, that they stay where they're at. They invest in what they know. I got a question here from Bennett. Nowadays, with so many conferences built around the family office community, do you think those events are still an efficient way for issuers to reach family office allocators, or are you seeing other more effective ways emerging?
So good, very really good point. The conferences after the pandemic took a nosedive, and bouncing back has been incredibly difficult for them. In the before the pandemic, the best conferences I we worked with were Opal Conference, the big one in Rhode Island, and the one on the West Coast, IMN for healthcare, the JP Morgan, and those they were good, they were big, and they were a little bit sort of, they were kind of the way that things used to happen. Um, Even attending those conferences, it was, in the best case, you might meet two, three good people. Today, if I go to an event and I take one guy, if I get one card that I actually really want to follow up on, and I'm looking forward to talking to the guy, I consider that a good, I consider that successful. And you're not going to get, you're not going to walk in. It's not like a dating, like speed dating. It's and the people on this, us as reps, on this call, we're going to be in a position to benefit from something like that much more, because we have a much broader focus in terms of the deal flow that we're working on. But if you're walking into a conference, unless it's very topic focused, and you've got a real estate deal, or you've got a niche, a niche deal that you're trying to find partners for, you're gonna, you're really, shooting, looking, you're really looking for a needle in a haystack there, and you're probably, it might not be successful. So it's about really vetting what the group, the conference is going to be. But I think they're still worth attending, and I still go to them when they, when it makes sense. But I wouldn't travel and go to something unless it was for very specific deal.
Yeah, that's good advice. That makes a ton of sense. Um, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. Um, I'm going to keep asking questions as well. Um, Peter, like, what do you see in the market now? Like, what kind of deal flow are you seeing? Is there any industry specific, growth equity, private credit? Like, what are you seeing in the marketplace today?
This, right now we're in a, we're kind of there's a lot more traction for things that have got that I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot more traction on things with fixed return, sort of very structured instruments, that kind of thing, debt opportunities, because right now with inflation where the market's at, I think a lot of those growth equity opportunities that people were going crazy for back in 2021, the market's swollen up now, and people aren't, it's like buying a piece of real estate. Do you want to buy it at what seems like it's the top of the market, even if it's probably not going to go down? Some, plenty of people are, but especially for things that are, anything speculative, and if you add execution risk, or the more the different risk factors you can add to it, it just becomes much harder right now, with because the market's going, no one really knows what's going to happen between inflation, what's happening in with our administration. So the economic outlook is very, with an election year coming up, it's harder to find people for the speculative opportunities. So you've really got to find another way to strike that nerve, or make the connection and get somebody to dive into it.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. Got a question here from Sandy. Are you seeing a generational turn in family offices, different focus in younger generations?
Another good one. Yeah, they've always there's so being that's a whole nother side of it, right? The transgenerational aspect of a family office is always it's a major part of it, right? And and everyone handles that and approaches it a bit differently in terms of how they're bringing the next generation in. Some of them aren't bringing them in at all. You got Steve Cohen, his kids, they're out crashed on a boat doing their thing, and not where and he's sitting in the box of the Mets trying to put deals together. So it's you see a lot of that, especially with some of these bigger groups. You also see things where they're investing in companies to put to let their let the next generation go get experience in. So it's really all over the place, but depending on the size of the family office you're talking about. The bigger family offices, there may be no members of the family actually on the in the C-suite there. That and it's a bunch of investment professionals and it's sort of outgrown, right? And that's going to be usually maybe a second or third generation set up there. And they've focused on preservation, they focused on longevity of that family office. The family members are the only benefits of it, and their involvement could be varies a lot. But with these smaller ones, you're seeing a lot of people that are, they made a ton of money in, different, various different booms that we've gone through years ago.com. You'd see people that did that. Now maybe you're seeing a lot more crypto folks that made a fortune doing that. And so there is a trend of bigger piles of wealth that are in the control of younger folks. And you're also seeing, the handoff where maybe a son-in-law is coming in and getting much more involved in the business, and he's bird dogging a lot of the investments now. And that's where it's really just kind of trying to get to know the dynamic of the folks you're dealing with, and how they interact, what role they play in the organization. Because I've got I was dealing with one of the members of the Cargill family, and he is mentally fried from how he grew up in his youth. But he's anything you send him, he get a day later he'll turn around like a 6-page thesis on the opportunity you sent him, why he likes it, why he doesn't like it, and then, by the way, I put this in front of the committee, I'll get you some feedback next week. So you could it's always different, but there's definitely a trend in going, a more youthful trend coming into this, and they're making decisions pretty much the same way that they were always made, though. Which
Gotcha.
which can
Just new
yeah
industry, a lot of technology probably, but the same process and the same complexities.
yeah yeah
You know, another we got some good questions. Good connectivity this morning. Dave is asking, prefaces his question with, there's been a ton of money lost in options betting against the market, and there are current big players betting billions in options against the S&P and Qs. Yet the market continues. I think he means continues higher. When or what triggers do you see that lead to the market making a significant correction? And this is not investment advice.
yeah I know that if I was there's a reason I don't manage money. I think we'd all be broke, but I for that I will, just for what it's worth, I think that we it's you've got a lot of the levers are being used to prop up and duct tape and band-aid together what's going on in the underlying macroeconomic market right now. And whatever, whether that's the Fed, whether that's bank rates, however they're trying to manipulate that. I don't think it's necessarily as sound and as big as it looks. It's a bit more of a hot air balloon. Um, the, do I think it's going to crash and explode? No, but I think you're going to see some big and sudden pullbacks that happen, but then quick rebounds. So just some volatility that comes up, and it's going to come up around the election, around all sorts of things that influence that around, the macro geopolitical stuff. What's going on? Is China going to war with Taiwan, or what? All those different things. Russia, Ukraine, a little bit sort of played out now, but
Yeah.
that's something like that's going to cause something. It'll create volatility for a week, and people will be on to the next news cycle.
Yeah. There's real no right answer. The amount of social, financial, political, economic change and just events in the past 3 years are unprecedented. There's no real time in our economic history where you can look back and say, well, the last time all this stuff happened in a 3 year period, the market did X, Y, Z. I think the best answer is I don't know. Like I don't, like you said, I don't know if there's going to be a giant correction. I feel like there's just as much of a chance that there's a giant upswing because there's a lot of cash on the sidelines, and if the equity market becomes a little bit more clear on upside, I think there could be just as much of a chance as it going up as it going down in big chunks. And anybody that says this is what's going to happen based on this, I mean, we're all kind of, it was a giant reset. When the COVID lockdown happened, it's like the giant reset in my mind. There is now no period in our nation's history or world history where we've had access to this much information that doesn't really mean anything because nothing like this has happened before. And that probably scares everybody, and that's why we're probably seeing a lot of complacency. But I like your answer, and totally agree that who knows what's going to happen. So take the course of action that protects yourself the best, but still gives you some upside. And that kind of ties in with what you're seeing in the structured interest investments being made. I saw another question pop in here. Hard time pulling up my chat. Can you see the question in the chat, Peter?
Yeah. So Suzanne, yeah. Um, do families like to co-invest together, prefer to invest with other family offices versus institutional or VC money? The institutions probably have the hardest battle but they also have, the biggest and captive audience, right? They have their army of advisors that are out there that even if they all have one good relationship, it's probably enough to fund some of these bigger private equity deals. But they're managing these mega funds. There's no exclusivity to it, despite what they try to, convey. Um, Families, they want to invest with the people they respect. So, if I don't care if you know, they're not going to respect, even before the blow up, Sam Bankman-Fried type of situation, right? They're just not going to take a look at that kid and say, hey, even though this guy's got billions of dollars, I know I like what he's doing. I respect how he's going about it. But if you show a family office that's playing with, $200 million real estate portfolio and they're looking for multifamily assets, and you tell them they can co-invest with a related group, they're going to run into that. You tell them they can co-invest into a deal with with Waypoint or one of these other, multi-billion-dollar, sort of, larger groups doing a similar strategy. They're gonna jump at an opportunity to do that. And the more exclusive it is, the fewer LPs they're willing to talk to or take on. The more special and important input the investor is going to feel on that one. So that's where I kind of see families love, they love to co-invest with their family offices, but you also have to remember that that's something that so many people try to kind of use as their way to get people's attention or get people excited about something, and it's total BS. There's nothing, or it's these fake family offices, these FFOs, I would jokingly call them. And so if that, I think that's a really good carrot when you've got to, when you have it to talk about it, but it's not going to go very far if there's no weight behind it.
I see. So what you're saying is that having a lead for institutional known larger base, the family offices are not necessarily as impressed if there's another big name family offices in it versus if there's an institutional lead or known lead at that level. Got it.
But because they also know about, with an institutional lead, they know that the distribution for it is far and wide. versus, so if they make an investment, their voice isn't going to be very loud when they want to get an update or when they want to talk about it. They're just going to be, something another advisor checks in on to make sure they're happy quarterly. On those, on a lot of these sort of family office sponsored deals, they I've just seen a ton of activity where you've got to, I'm sorry, the a lot of these deals that are coming together, people look at them a lot more closely when you can, say that they've got maybe, or you've got an investment banking team engaged on them, group that's, really looking at the modeling, that's really looking at the financials, looking at the different levers that are affecting it from sort of an investment banking perspective.
Yeah.
That can be a big, the quality of the materials that comes out of it, the quality of the data room, the documents that these folks can review. Generally, if they've got an analyst in their family office or on their team, it becomes a much different the conversation goes much differently versus the guy that hands his card to somebody and gives his elevator pitch and talks about a really good idea he's got, and then he doesn't really have the materials to convey, outside of his head what the opportunity is or what he's working on.
That's great. Thanks for the question, Suzanne. Peter, thank you so much for coming on and starting off our Thursday the right way with just some really sage advice on how to connect to your community, build trust, create deal flow, and then be a resource to the family office side and the investor side. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And it sounds like I need to come down to Palm Beach and go to a couple bars with you.
I'm telling you, come down in November and bring your little black book. We'll have a lot of fun.
Awesome. And at Regiment, it's not a little black book; it's a little red book. So I'll bring a couple extra ones. Thanks a lot, Peter. Have a great day.
Awesome format. Thank you.